Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. I know we're not really in the thick of the election yet, but it looks like people are already picking their sides, and a lot of things are going down. We're not going to talk anything about political sides here, but I am going to talk about the first time that I ever voted in a political election and how that relates into the world of wrestling. If you go back to Halloween Havoc of 1999, there was a match that was supposed to take place that ended up being the WCW screw job. The match ended up being Sting versus Hulk Hogan, and the opposite of what happened at the Bash at the Beach 2000 happened. At this match, basically Hogan walked into the ring and laid down, basically having Sting pin him in order to get the win. I don't know if this was him playing some sort of political game where WCW saw that he had creative control, but they really needed him to lose the Sting. But he just didn't really see it that way, and this just was the only way out, that he would lose, but he would lose this way. Or maybe maybe WCW thought they needed a kick in the pants and they needed some sort of like realism thing that happened on the show that people would be like, was that real? Is this basically Hogan walking out? Let's face it. At this point, I don't really know if Hulk Hogan would have been able to walk into WWE, even if he was a free agent. If WCW would have released him and he would have been out there, I think that WCW was like the one place in town that was willing to put up with Hulk Hogan's bullcrap. WWF/WWE was doing so well at the time. I really don't think they needed him. I think that when they brought him back in 2002, I think that was because of his name value, and I think that after WCW closed and they went through the Invasion storyline that kind of was looked at as like a stinker even at the time, they needed the big names of WCW once they were available. They needed the NWO, they needed Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and that's one of the reasons why they came in. And did it that way. But basically, after Halloween Havoc, Hogan is on the outside. He's not really, doing anything with wrestling. Nitro isn't really bringing his name up. I guess they're playing off what happened at Halloween Havoc, the way that he lost. But on the Thanksgiving edition of the Jay Leno Tonight Show, Hogan is the guest, and he comes out and he's talking to Jay. And he announces that he's running for president. I will tell you, I was an 18-year-old mark at the time. I knew about the dirt sheets. I definitely knew what to know about wrestling. I didn't know about the Observer at the time. But I really thought that Hogan was gonna run for president. I didn't know that it was just basically a gimmick to get his name out there. I don't even really know where the storyline went to. I know that WCW covered it on Nitro, where they basically played a clip of it. I don't remember them really making commercials for Hogan to run, but that was kind of like the storyline of why Hogan was not on TV anymore. We actually wouldn't see Hogan show up on Nitro until the first edition of 2000's Monday Nitro that came from the Georgia Dome. It was always looked at as like a big show because of the fact it was in their backyard. It was a dome show that they would do a few times a year. They would try and sell these massive amounts of tickets to try to get the $1 million gate for a Nitro. That was the dream, to sort of pump lifeblood into this. Of course, that was coming right off of the heels of Kevin Nash beating Goldberg. They had already hyped up a Nash versus Goldberg return match already on that show because of, like, Kevin Nash was saying that his involvement with Scott Hall wasn't any, and he thought that he had won the match, but he was able to go out there and prove that he was going to do it again. Then all of a sudden Goldberg is rushed to the police headquarters because they're saying he's being investigated for creeping in on Miss Elizabeth, following her around to the gym, and always showing up at her work. And of course, all of a sudden, as Nash is trying to find out what's going on with Goldberg, Hollywood Hogan is getting dropped off curbside to walk into Nitro to basically check out and see what's going on. And he has sort of like an interaction with Nash where they go back and forth, and Hogan says that he's running for office, but if Nash wants to have a match, they can have a match tonight to prove who the better man is. And since Goldberg has already been removed from the situation, Nitro moves on to making the main event being Hogan versus Nash. Of course, ends up being the finger poke of doom, which I think a lot of people sort of point fingers to as one of the reasons why WCW went down the toilet, and one of the final blows. I think it honestly gets worse from there. I love the NWO, but the fact that they would never let the NWO angle go, and they actually still were running the company as WCW/NWO, two organizations working under one. If they really wanted the NWO to be their own organization, they would have gave them Thunder, they would have gave them Nitro, they would have had two separate shows continuously running, kind of like super shows building up to pay-per-views, where they could add some sort of payoff, a lot like Raw and SmackDown were run as two different brands. Maybe it would have worked. They definitely had a huge roster at the time. They could have pulled off and made Thunder a more watched show, because they could have put stars that you had to put the TV on the Thunder instead of watching Seinfeld at the time in order to keep up with certain guys, instead of basically just turning Thunder into a job show of just like the stars that you're elevating on Thunder are people that you don't really want to see at all on Nitro. Of course, they would try to double book the show, where they would film Thunder right after Nitro to get the stars back on there. Worked for a minute, and then all of a sudden the stars started figuring out, like, hey, we're doing two TV shows for the price of one. We ain't doing that no more. WCW was always a case of the inmates running the asylum. All right, how this pays off. Hulk Hogan, he ends up coming back. They end up, redoing the NWO storyline yet once again with NWO Elite. This was, of course, because Goldberg was going to have to defeat the members of the NWO one by one to build up to Hogan versus Goldberg yet once again, with Goldberg winning the championship. But as Goldberg is running out of Nitro, he's beating up the limo. He wants to break the glass to prove that he's a tough guy. He ends up cutting his arm and messing up all these tendons on the inside, and Goldberg's on the shelf, and he's done for a while. Basically, that's the end of us talking about wrestling. But election day comes. I remember I was working at Pizza Hut at the time. It was the first time I ever voted. It was Bush versus Gore. I really didn't know what the situation was going to be like. I didn't know that it was going to be such a big election. Of course, that is the one with like the hanging Chad situation in Florida. I live in Georgia. It's two separate elections. As I'm about to say, like the way Georgia elections are run, it's a lot like how California elections are run here. Basically, you go to vote on all like the propositions and things like that. Almost everybody that's running for office in both of those states, it's already pre-decided. The way that the parties are split up in those states, it's so heavily handed opposite directions that it's pretty much done. I remember when I got to the polling place that day, the lines were really, really long. I thought they were so long that I might have gotten in trouble. because I really thought I was just running down the street, grab my ballot, punch it, and get back to work. And I ended up waiting in a long line. I probably waited over an hour. And I know at the time, I had to close the restaurant in order to do it, because I just didn't know what it was going to be. I stuck to my guns. I knew that I wasn't going to have a chance to vote later. I wanted to be able to say I voted in my first election when I had a chance. But as we were waiting in line, people were, playing it wasn't like they had the radio on their phones like people do now. They don't play MP3s or anything like that. People were just playing the freaking radio out of a boombox. We were listening to KNCI, it's here, Kicks Country, whatever it was, 101.5 in Atlanta that we were probably listening to at the time. And they were doing the normal banter with the morning shows. And they had already announced that they were willing to throw in the hat and basically say that Georgia had already been decided, and the presidential election was the electoral votes were going to go towards President Bush. And so I'm sitting there waiting in line, and I'm like, well, son of a gun, I've already waited in this line. I might as well vote to say I voted. Once I got into the booth, there basically was the line to vote for Bush, the line to vote for Gore. There was probably a couple independent people running at the time, and then there was the write-in line. On the write-in line, I actually filled in the bubble, and I wrote in Hulk Hogan. I didn't even think to maybe write in Terry Bollea or anything like that. I didn't vote for Mickey Mouse. I didn't vote for myself. I don't know how many votes in the state of Georgia Hulk Hogan, let alone in the whole United States, Hulk Hogan got. But I can guarantee you, if they would have wrote them down and put a tally somewhere of the polling place in Gwinnett County, Georgia, Hulk Hogan in the year 2000 got one vote for me.